and we're talking Amarcord from 1973. Talk a little bit about the film first. Pollen snow falls over the village of Borgo San Giuliano. Winter has ended and spring has arrived. The traditional bonfire or burning of the Witch of Winter is held, and people are just burning their shit and even half-heartedly joking about burning a man alive. We are slammed with dozens of characters. The town haughty Gradishka, a blind accordion player, a stumble bum, this academic guy running around on a bike who can talk to us, the viewer, directly. Volpina, the werewolf, I don't know what you'd call her, prostitute or a nymphomaniac, and many others. It's just a tableau of half-remembered recollections from Fellini's own childhood, growing up in this similar seacoast Italian village. What follows is a largely plotless film. It's just a series of vignettes of nostalgia and his own memories, all kind of during with the backdrop of fascism in Italy in the 30s. We get a montage of his school years, schoolboy antics, family life, nightlife, group masturbation in the back of a car, checking out peasant ladies' hot asses, getting onto bicycle seats, giant talking Mussolini wreath heads, political torture, town-mandated prostitution, the zaniness of mental illness, car races, sucking on big fat titties, dead mothers, and a wedding. So, one of the things that first came to mind with this movie for me, for what I know of Federico Fellini, just like reading interviews, it's been a long time since I actually had watched a Fellini movie, is that he was like really interested in comics and illustration. This movie for me like came across as really like comic book in its like compositions and like characters, just like the sort of people he casts in the movie just look like caricatures of human beings. I think it was like a Grant Morrison interview when he was talking about All-Star Superman and just talking about how his idea for like Metropolis, as drawn by Frank Quitely, was sort of like a Fellini movie. And I kept thinking about that, like how, man, this could be a Frank Quitely live action movie pretty well. Even like, and there's like even like a Jacques Tati like sort of like compositions and like kind of visual gags that are just like everywhere, and just like layers of characters like all doing things in the background and people talking over one another. There's actually even going further with this like cartoonist thing is there's the one cartoonist Milo Manera who became internet famous there a couple years ago because he drew a picture of Spider-Woman's butt that made everybody really mad. So this is a quote he had about Fellini. Plot, development, narrative thrills, and chills have only relative importance for Fellini. What matters to him is the revelation of marvels, the awe-inspiring bringing to light of secret essences, the ineffable universal transfiguration uniting everything. Which is just like a way of saying he's a really great filmmaker, and I think this is probably one of his best movies. I like this movie a lot. I don't even know where to begin talking about why I like this movie so much. Just like so much, just like there's like that. I think the scene that really summed it up for me is there's a moment when they're coming to the beach because they're going to go out into the boats to go see the giant ship that's going to be coming by, and just like there's this roving camera, and you have that like the amazing Nino Rota score. Just playing, and just all these characters just like flowing by. But it's all kind of central, like the central figure of this shot is this like just like overweight guy in his swimsuit riding his bicycle, and you see all these other characters kind of passing him by, a bunch of school kids like on the sidewalk walking along, and it's just like, man, what like a just amazing thing this movie is. Like, because like you watch so many movies, and like most movies have nothing resembling that at all. It's just drives me crazy how easy he makes it all look. So RJ, did this movie have enough body humor for you?
Well, to lead off, I have to preface this a little bit. I went into this movie with heavy trepidation. I've only seen two other Fellini flicks, 8.5, which is undeniably pretty great, and La Dolce Vita, which I watched a couple months ago. And although it was good, I thought it was A, the longest movie of all time,
Yep.
B, pretty boring at times,
Yep.
and C, in a post 8.5 world, a little bit unnecessary. So I went into this one really kind of not looking forward to it because the last Fellini kind of left me just not wanting to be alive, I guess, anymore.
Well, I'll mention, because I think even before we recorded like a single episode of the podcast, and like when we were just talking about doing this, you were like really dreading this movie.
I was dreading this a lot because at that point, my Fellini was batting 500. He had one great one and then one that just felt too much of the same, too long. Anyways, so I was really not looking forward to this. And then I sat down on a Saturday afternoon and I watched this one. And I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a very good movie. It did change my mind on Fellini. I am now more open to some more Fellini joints.
Good.
But I don't think it was great.
Okay.
And there are a few small things about it because I will say there's a lot of things I loved, especially what you said with the body humor. There is a character named the Fart, which was my absolute favorite thing in this movie.
So last week when you started making fart sounds at the thought of watching another Fellini movie, I already had watched the movie and I already was like, oh, how appropriate. Because I mean,
how quaint.
Like whenever something thoughtful or insightful is said in this movie, like fart, shit, piss, and people calling one another assholes just like happens. Like
there's a scene where like there are characters that have monologues like to the audience. And there's like one where the guy's like talking about really serious stuff, and then out of like in the corner of the screen, it's just like, and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Who did that?" So like that is absolutely my kind of stuff.
You're kind
I love
of flick.
that. So before I kind of dive into the things I did like, I'll just mention the few things that not to say that like I didn't like it, and it's kind of weird because I'll just say usually these are things I really like in movies, but it kind of lost me a little. So as you said, it's a very abstract film. It kind of just pans between people, between stories.
Yeah.
And I usually like that, but I thought it was kind of a little disjointed, and I thought that it kind of showed where there were certain scenes that just had very bizarre tones. Like you would get like the horny teen boys like all jerking off in the van, and then it would go to like his dad getting like interrogated by like Gestapos and like getting forced to drink like oil and stuff. And I thought it was kind of a weird contrast, but like I get why he does that because I guess that's the point, right? Like that's how he remembers these things.
Yeah.
Is like he remembers the town life, the goofy stuff, but then there's also that like hidden dread of like fascists like in like coming out at any time. So like I get all that stuff. I didn't think it went together as well as it could have. And like I don't know how you would change that. I have no suggestions to make this movie better or different or anything like that. I'm just saying that that's kind of where it lost me a little bit. So for me, it's not a masterpiece or anything like that. And it's for those kinds of reasons. However, there is some absolute amazing stuff in this. Like, as I said, the character named The Fart. I love that. It was absolutely amazing. The kind of... It reminded me of Stephen King's Dreamcatcher, the book, not the movie. How at like any given time, there was just farting. And I thought that was really cool.
It's like the movie Dreamcatcher promised to be and never delivered on.
Yeah, it's the promised potential of that amazing book and what it could have been. That's basically what it was. One of my absolute favorite little quotes here that I had written down was one guy said, that the lady wanted to get posterior intimacy.
Yeah.
I thought that was really fun. I've never heard that before, and I'm going to try to lay that down with the missus later tonight. See if she flies with that. She
Nice.
might. I'll let you know next week whether or not it goes. If that doesn't go, I'll try the fart gambit and see if that works. Like you said, there's kids jerking off in cars. There's ladies with huge breasts. There's an entire segment on asses. What I got from this movie was that Fellini is just a big old horn dog.
I don't think anyone would deny that.
No, I'm sure that's been said many times before, but this was where I personally found that out. There were two other lines that I thought were really funny, just out of context. I'll lay them on you. One was, "The doctor's an asshole. I can go to bed whenever I want." I thought that was fun. And then the other one was, "Dip your cock in a coffee." So I thought that was a fun line too.
Yep.
But no, yeah, like there's a lot of stuff that I like. Like it's indulgent, it's kind of depraved, carnal.
Yeah.
It's just kind of,
Those are all my favorite words.
Yeah, and farts. So, there was one other line I thought was really funny, where when you see kind of like the main family and the dad's getting mad at the kid and he chases him out of the house, and then the dad says, "Who fathered this piece of shit?" Yeah. I thought that was really funny. So, I don't know. But anyways, like that's kind of the stuff that I liked. So kind of, I guess the point, like it worked, is teen boy humor. Just a bunch of horn dogs farting and looking at skirts and butts and stuff. So that's my kind of jam right there.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to know who has this on their top 10 films of all time list?
Larry Flint?
Ray Bradbury.
Ooh, yeah. I do like old Ray.
I know.
I didn't know he was an old horn dog too, though.
Oh, he probably. Yeah, they're basically all. I mean, when you're old, you become a horn dog.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I guess.
It comes with the territory.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Some other facts to throw out there. This movie was Fellini was nominated for Best Director and for Best Writing on this film, for as an original screenplay. It won Best Foreign Film in 1975, which is, I guess, like 2 years after it was released in Italy. So I guess that was the old times when things had like weird lapses as far as like how release schedules work. Unlike these days. But even still now, like things will like be like released and screened for critics in 2015. They'll appear on best of lists for like the best films of 2015. But like no one can watch it till 2016. And right. Yeah, maybe it's one of those type of deals. But yeah, there's this wonderful. I love quotes tonight. Roger Ebert had this bit here, which I think will be actually pretty helpful, maybe as a guide for like as we're going through the Criterion Collection, because all these directors are quite well represented in the Criterion Collection. Right. So Ingmar Bergman achieves his greatness through thought and soul searching. Alfred Hitchcock built his films with meticulous craftsmanship, and Louis Buñuel used his fetishes and fantasies to construct barbed jokes about humanity. But Fellini, well, movie making for him seems almost effortless, like breathing, and he can orchestrate the most complicated scenes with purity and ease. He's the Willie Mays of movies. And like that's like when I think about like in eight and a half, like just like those scenes of like all those characters dancing, it's like kind of like that. There's like the old cliche people trot out of like, oh, it's like so Fellini-esque or something like that. And like there's like those like in those things where you're like, yeah, no, he has those things in his movies. And I guess like one of the things he would do on set with his movies is that the actors would be like, I mean, you probably noticed that like his characters everyone's dubbed. Even like they're all Italian, and that's like one of those like weird Italian like production things where characters everything would be dubbed in later, be American actors, or if they're speaking English or they're speaking Italian, they get dubbed into Italian after the fact.
Right.
But I guess like what he would have doing in his scenes is he'd have music playing. And so they're like his characters are sort of always moving and bobbing to sort of like a music that's not necessarily there. And I think that it creates this really like great effect of just like a liveliness in like all his scenes. That stuff is just so neat to me. The one thing that came to mind was like there's that Italian race car scene
Yep.
which apparently is a thing that happens in Italy. And like there's a Wes Anderson short film called like Castello Cavalcanti from like 2013, and
Mm,
it's just Jason Schwartzman. He crashes his little sports car into a cafe or something like that, and
hmm.
he gets out and has coffee at a cafe. And I was like, oh yeah, it's just like in Amarcord now in my mind.
Yep.
And even like there's like the Grand Hotel, which like
Yeah, yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, Grand Budapest Hotel. And then there's like the one like academic narrator in Amarcord. It's like, oh, it's like Bob Balaban in Moonrise Kingdom. It's just like, oh,
Okay, yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
man, Wes Anderson, he really digs into his Criterion Collection, I guess, before he starts making a movie.
Maybe that's why he has a lifetime achievement award there, and anything he makes just automatically gets filed away into the Criterion. Because he must be the number one fan, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think every single one of his movies up until Grand Budapest Hotel, which is just only a matter of time, has been put into the Criterion Collection. So
I think
he
Moonrise was only a year after home release when it got put in.
yeah,
So
that was with Darjeeling Limited too. It's only
mhm.
it's all just a matter of time.
Yep.
So yeah, the first time I watched this movie, I found it to be this like really joyous, wonderful, rambunctious type of movie. Watching it the second time with the commentary track going, the sinister nature of people really started to come more into focus, and like kind of like how like mean people can be.
How
Like,
so?
or just like there's like in that opening scene, like everyone's just like kind of like bitter. Like no one actually is hateful of one another, but people are very
Yeah.
annoyed with people, which I think is
Hmm.
super real, like so well observed. Because I think
Yeah.
like yeah, there's just, if you lived in a small community where like everyone has like grown up with one another for like generations, like
Hmm.
everyone knows everybody knows everyone's dirty little secret, and like you still have this like kind of like overarching sort of like Catholic Church body over top of everyone, kind of guiding like the morality of everyone. So you still have to be kind of nice to people. But
Right.
I mean, there's all these like moments where like characters are just like really like mean to one another or just like backhanded to one another. And like I think I always come back to that scene where like there's like the one guy who's at the top of the big like pyre that they're about to set on fire, and they start
Hmm.
making jokes about, oh, we're gonna let you burn alive.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
that old chestnut.
No, I thought that was pretty fun too. It's pretty playful.
Yeah,
I mean, who hasn't been put on top of a pyre before?
I know. Being chased out of town. But yeah,
Mm.
like, because I had read like some people like who don't like this movie, they had made some comments about like how there's like not a likable person in the film, and I was like, when I was reading that after watching it, I was like, that's nuts. And then I was watching it the second time, I'm like, yeah, I could see that, but at the same time,
Yeah.
there's just so much like movement and like I don't know, like moments are just like bouncing back and forth. Like you're getting such a huge range of like human beings and like people at their worst and best that I
Yeah.
mean, how could you zone in on that one thing unless you think that people should always like great, which is ridiculous because
Yeah.
people just aren't. Like that's
Oh yeah,
yeah.
people suck. That's the point. Like everybody sucks.
That is the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I checked out the commentary track by two dudes.
Two dudes.
Yeah.
Is that new?
Yes, this is the first duo, and it seems like they actually recorded at the same time, like almost like they were doing podcasts before podcasting. Yeah,
Ooh. How very tart.
yeah, couple of tarts.
Couple of tarts.
Yeah, so they're going about this in a very academic way. They're really all about like critiques of like power structures and male female relationships within systems and
Boring.
yeah, it's kind of film scholarship at its finest and worst. It's like, I mean, RJ, do you think Fellini was ever really concerned about representations on the screen of people?
No, all he cared about was blowing the biggest fart or filming the fattest ass.
Well-
Like it's pretty clear.
I mean, this goes back to like the thing I was talking about with like cartooning and comics, which is like a medium which is about like iconic representations of people. Like you go by the stereotype and you go with the funniest way of depicting people because it's funny, and it's
Yeah,
short and,
absolutely.
it's shorthand. I mean, you think about like all those like the school teachers that they kind of like blow through, and it's like each one of those characters, it's like yeah, they are drawings. Like there's like one of the special features on the or sorry, supplements on the
Supplements.
yes.
Come on, get it right.
yeah.
Jeez.
I know. The supplements. There's a one that is about his drawings for like the film, and just like, yeah, he has these like visuals in his mind about what these like characters look like, and he jotted them down, and then he cast people that like kind of suit that energy of what those people look like in drawings. And so I don't think he worried about like how does like do particular like gender types or like how
Yeah.
like certain like people's roles in society be represented in film. I don't think he gave a crap. He worked it because he's like, he knows how people watch movies, because he was like a person who made movies and watched movies.
Yeah. Well, it's a visual thing too, and
Yeah.
it's real. Like everyone, like you said, the teachers, everybody has that like old teacher that you can just look at and you're like, yeah, I know that guy. It was like an old bald white guy with like his tongue like sticking out of his mouth just a little bit, or like his other characters like the village fox, like that lady, or the young teen heartthrob with his soft blonde hair just kind of peeled back a little bit. Like these are all real life people that everybody knows. So I think it makes sense. Like I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like how a lot of like successful things operate. You use types to like kind of construct things because they're like packed with cultural knowledge. People are going into watching these things. I mean, even though this is a movie about Italy. I mean, I get these like shorthands because these are kind of like, I mean, at least in the Western world, these are like universal cues that like I
Right.
think are like, yeah, you have to use these things because if you're constantly deconstructing things, like people are just not going to get lost with what you're wanting to do. Well, I guess like one thing that I kind of wanted to maybe bring up was just like we've talked in private about the television show Stranger Things. Man,
Private
Stranger Things,
conversations.
which is a television show that deals in nostalgia. And so I was like thinking about that when I think about Amarcord, which is like a movie about nostalgia from a lived experience, whereas
Right.
something like Stranger Things is nostalgia for entertainment. Like, which is like
It's
which is like why, I don't know why
I think it's
something like that is,
nostalgia for like nostalgia's sake, right? Is
well,
that what you mean? Or
I just mean like it's almost like having it's like I have like, you know, one like, so if Amarcord, which is like, you know, whatever in Roman language was like roughly translates to I remember. So it's, I mean, it's about him actually talking about memories that he experienced in his life. Like these aren't things that he watched on television. Stranger Things is nostalgia for entertainment. Like it's nostalgic for
Yeah.
like it's like these are the movies I have nostalgia for. It's not like about what those filmmakers experienced. Because I mean, obviously, I mean, I'm not expecting like every movie with like alternate like parallel universe monsters to like, oh, you have to like, did you experience that? But I
no,
mean, but
I think what you mean is do you mean that it's like insincere?
it's, well, I don't think it's insincere. I think like there's a legitimate nostalgia, but I think it's like a bad form of it, I guess. Like
Right.
I don't
Pandering?
Yeah, not even pandering. I think it's just like misguided comes to mind. It seems like you're just going for it's like being nostalgic for something you never did.
Yeah.
It's so hollow. Like
Okay, yeah.
like yeah, it's like why do you care about like Steven Spielberg movies more than like what your life was like growing up, I guess.
Right.
I mean, I guess there's a bit of snobbishness, I guess, in the way I think about it. But for me, I mean, why would I make a movie about like, I want to make a movie about like Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque sort of events happening in my life. And it's like, well, I watched a movie about that, but I have nothing to say about that beyond, wasn't that cool when I watched that in another movie before?
Right. Well, I guess you could say they're just trying to emulate something they like, but
Right.
I know what you mean. Like, it didn't, that kind of stuff didn't bother me as much. Like in Stranger Things, the nostalgic stuff, like, because it seems pretty clear. Like a lot of, like, not just you, because I remember you said that a long time ago, but like I've seen other people bring that up recently about it. Like it didn't bother me that much. There were just certain instances where it seemed like entire scenes were set up specifically to deliver like a nostalgic like comment. Like there's a scene later in this season where like they call the high school teacher to like get his opinion on something, but they they call him and he's watching the thing and he's like explaining how they did like the special effects and stuff. But like the reason they called him like it's totally unnecessary because they like need help building something, but the girl who like needs it, like she knows what to do already because she's the one who like told them this is what we need. So there was like no real reason to call that guy other than to like show a scene of him watching this like now famous 80s movie. So I don't know. Stuff like that was like one thing I thought was weird, but
Right.
some of the other things like I can get by or get past. Like it didn't bother me as much.
I guess like, well, I mean, in that case with that teacher, like that teacher character, I mean, it seems like the nostalgia with that character is because not so much that like the Duffer Brothers had a teacher that was actually like that, but it's more like this is nostalgia for those type of characters in movies that we watched rather than like what my actual teacher was like. Because there's always like, well, he's like the guy, he's around because he knows about science and so he's useful when it comes to like giving information that's relevant to the plot because the kids don't know, so he's like the Mr. Wizard kind of character, but it's like that character doesn't like it's not a lived-in experience. That's like the lived-in like memory of watching a TV show that had that type of character. And I just like, for me it's like, well, I know which one's more interesting to me. It's something I would watch.
Yeah. Well, you brought it up once too, like the absent father, like the aloof parent, like just totally unaware of what's going on. Like that seemed like another one of those things in that show. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who's to say?
I don't know. I don't know why I felt the need to bring up that, but I guess like when I'm thinking about Amarcord and I think about nostalgia at this moment in time, that's the online discussion about that Stranger Things show, which I will just throw out there that I watched the first 5 episodes and I just didn't bother watching the last 3 episodes at this point. But I know.
Yeah, but you're also a bad person.
Well, yeah, I am a bad person. That goes without say. Definitely.
There are a few shows I just give up on. Daredevil season 2 was one. I watched half of that and I just said never again. But well, not never again. I just don't care anymore.
I think I lasted about 15 minutes on old Daredevil.
Yeah, well, I plunged through for a while and then it just got to be too much. Too much.
You know what Netflix doesn't have?
Farts?
Well, yeah, it doesn't have Amarcord.
That's true.
Yeah, so
they can't handle the farts.
So what's the point? What's the point? Last week, or actually on the 7 Samurai week, we had a little feature talking about like who hates this movie. I think I would like to make that a regular talking point going forward.
Yeah, that sounds fine. Because eventually, in a couple episodes, I will be the reviewer for that, as you know. But we'll let the audience discover that on their own.
That's right.
Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Well, the first one I would like to mention here is Dr. Christmas gave Amarcord half a star, and says actually really boring, the least interesting oppressed Italians I ever seen. Always knew Fellini was a hack.
Okay, I have one question for him. What other oppressed Italians has he seen? If these are the least interesting ones, what are some other ones? I need him to follow through with his comment.
Well, in a few months, RJ, we're going to be watching Salo, and
oh god,
we're going to be coming back to Italian fascism, baby.
Yeah, well, that's another one I'm not looking forward to. There in the next 10 episodes, there's 2 that I am absolutely dreading, and one that I'm not going to watch. So, okay. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
We've got Heretic. He gave this 1 star. He says repulsive. The nostalgia here feels like an early grave, a refuge for someone who has stopped living.
What?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And then we have Jeremy Jones.
Jer.
Old Jer. He gave it 1.5 stars. He says,
moving up.
Italian cinema and Fellini in particular continues to elude me. This is the least impressive offering I've seen from Fellini yet. Everything I don't like about his other films is magnified here to almost parodic proportions. An insubstantial review for an insubstantial film. Please skip it.
Oh God, if that's how he feels about this, I can't. How's he ever going to make it through La Dolce Vita?
I don't know, man.
Jeez.
I don't know.
He's pleading with you too to skip it. Like, he really had a problem with this movie, I guess.
Yeah, people have problems out there, my friend.
Well, I'm not as heated up as the last time we did this, but because that movie I really liked, and hearing criticisms drove me crazy. But
yeah,
those people are wrong.
Paul Saldner, he really hit it out of the ballpark. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we can get more input from him on other classic movies soon.
Yeah, hopefully he pops up again one of these days.
Yeah.
Well, I think that concludes our discussion of Amarcord. After the break,
right.
you'll hear from us again, I guess.
Maybe.